We are looking at the pinnacle of human engineering, Elena, the Burj Khalifa. It's not just a building. It's a vertical city, 828 meters of glass, piercing the stratosphere.
It is a masterpiece, Mark. I'll give you that. It's the ultimate status symbol. But you know my rule. The shinier the object, the darker the shadow. And this shadow smells terrible.
I know where you're going, but let's look at the specs first. You have concrete pumped vertically to heights that shouldn't be possible. They had to develop entirely new mixtures just to stop it from curing in the pipes before it hit the top floor.
Impressive. But here's the reality check. You build the tallest tower on Earth. You fill it with 35,000 people, luxury apartments, the Armani Hotel, and you forget one basic thing.
They didn't forget it. You can't just forget the plumbing on a billion-dollar project. The engineering schematics for the water supply alone are insane. High-pressure pumps at various levels just to fight gravity.
They handled the water going up just fine. It's the water coming down that caused the crisis. When this thing opened, Dubai wasn't ready. The city grew faster than its own intestines could handle.
That's the classic infrastructure lag. You see it in combat zones. You build the base before you dig the latrines. But this is downtown Dubai, not a fob in the middle of nowhere.
Effectively, it was the same thing. The municipal sewage system was completely overwhelmed. The grid couldn't take the load, so they made a choice. Build it now, figure out the waste later.
So, walk me through the logistics. You flush a toilet on the 160th floor. That waste has a long way to fall. We are talking about terminal velocity inside a pipe.
It hits the bottom, and instead of flowing into a citywide treatment network, it hits a holding tank, a massive subterranean septic tank, and that tank fills up fast.
I've done the math on this. A human produces, what, a few liters of waste a day? Multiply that by 35,000 residents and visitors, you're looking at tons of sludge every single day.
Exactly. And you can't leave it there. Methane builds up, it becomes a bomb. So enter the orange snake.
I've seen the satellite photos. It looks like a traffic jam from hell. Miles of orange tanker trucks lined up in the desert sun.
That's the poop fleet, Mark. For years, this was the solution. Every single day, an army of trucks would hook up to the skyscrapers, suck out the raw sewage, and drive it out of the city.
That is wildly inefficient. From a tactical standpoint, you are introducing thousands of points of failure. One truck breaks down, one valve leaks, and you have a biohazard spill in a luxury zone.
It wasn't just inefficient, it was dangerous. These drivers were waiting in line for 24 hours straight just to dump their load at the treatment plant.
24 hours? In the Dubai heat? That's pushing 110 degrees Fahrenheit easy. The pressure inside those tanks must have been critical.
Drivers were sleeping in their cabs, cooking meals on the asphalt. It was a logistical gridlock. And the cost? Astronomical. But for the developers, it was the cost of doing business.
It's a brute force solution. Instead of a gravity-fed pipe system, which is basically free energy once you build it, you're burning diesel to move biological waste by road.
Fake it till you make it. That was the motto. They wanted the skyline to look like the 22nd century, even if the sanitation was stuck in the 19th century.
There's also the structural risk. Heavy trucks, constantly vibrating, moving in and out of the building's foundation zone. That kind of traffic load isn't usually accounted for in the initial structural stress tests.
And think about the PR nightmare. You're selling penthouses for millions of dollars. Ocean view, sky deck, and don't mind the fleet of sewage tankers downstairs.
It breaks the immersion. It reminds me of aircraft carriers, nuclear-powered apex technology. But if the toilets clog, the whole ship smells like death. It grounds you immediately.
It's worse than that. It exposes the fragility of the whole system. If those trucks stop running, maybe a strike, maybe a fuel shortage, the Burj Khalifa literally becomes uninhabitable in 48 hours.
It becomes a vertical trap. You'd have backflow. The lower floors would flood first. You'd have to evacuate the world's tallest building because of poop.
Precisely. It's a single point of failure on a massive scale. We rely on invisible systems. When you realize the sewers aren't there, the illusion of civilization cracks.
So, the orange snake became this legendary symbol of Dubai's growing pains. A gleaming city rising from the sand, tethered to a line of dirty trucks.
It was a chaotic ecosystem. The drivers were paid per trip, so they were racing each other. Accidents happened, spills happened. The desert sand was literally soaking up the overflow.
That's an environmental disaster waiting to happen. Raw sewage in the water table? Even in a desert, that contamination spreads.
They didn't care about the water table. They cared about the ribbon-cutting ceremony. This is the dark side of rapid urbanization. China, India, the UAE, they all face it.
Speed kills. In engineering, if you rush the foundation, the cracks show up in the roof. Here, the cracks showed up on the highway.
And the money involved in this trucking operation? Millions. Someone owned those trucks. Someone had the contract. A very lucrative monopoly on waste.
Of course, where there's filth, there's profit. A closed loop. The building creates the problem. The contractor sells the solution.
It's the perfect racket. Why build a sewer pipe once for a fixed cost when you can charge a daily fee for trucks forever?
That's cynical, even for you. You think they delayed the sewers on purpose?
I think they prioritized the skyline. The sewer contracts were boring. The Burj was sexy. They put the money where the cameras were.
Standard operating procedure. But let's get back to the mechanics of the building itself. Dealing with that pressure spike. When the trucks hook up, that's a high-pressure transfer.
It's loud, it's smelly, and it's right there in the shadow of the luxury malls. The cognitive dissonance must have been amazing.
It's a reality check. We think technology saves us, but sometimes it just complicates the basic biological needs. We're still just cavemen in glass towers.
Cavemen who need to flush. And when you can't flush, the civilization ends. That's the stakes here. It wasn't just a funny story about trucks. It was a city on the brink of sanitation collapse.
So, block 1, we've established the absurdity. The tallest thing man has ever made was basically a giant portable toilet for a few years.
A gold-plated portable toilet, and the fix wasn't easy. Connecting a live building like that to a new sewer grid is like doing open-heart surgery while the patient is running a marathon.
Let's break down the mechanics of this orange snake. You are looking at standard vacuum tankers, usually holding about 5,000 to 10,000 gallons of raw slurry. These rigs weren't designed for static waiting in 120-degree heat. The hydraulic pumps overheat. The rubber seals on the hatches degrade rapidly under UV exposure, and the internal pressure builds up like a pressure cooker. It is a mechanical failure waiting to happen on a public highway.
And the logistics were pure chaos. We aren't talking about a scheduled convoy with military precision. This was a free-for-all market. Independent contractors paid by the load, meaning speed was the only metric that mattered to their bank accounts. If you're stuck in a 24-hour line at the Al Aweer treatment plant, you aren't making money. You're losing fuel, time, and sanity. That economic pressure forced them to cut corners immediately.
That's where the physics of the weight gets dangerous. A fully loaded tanker sitting on asphalt in that climate creates a massive thermal load. The liquid inside expands, releasing gases, hydrogen sulfide and methane. If the relief valves are clogged with sand, which happens constantly in the desert, the tank can rupture. We've seen footage of these things popping open. It's a biological explosion that covers everything within 50 feet.
The city knew the treatment plant was the bottleneck. Al Aweer was designed for a city half the size of what Dubai became. It was processing 300,000 cubic meters a day when its maximum capacity was rated for much less. They were literally redlining the municipal infrastructure. Every truck joining that line was adding stress to a system that had already failed mathematically years prior.
And you have to consider the driving conditions. These heavy trucks were sharing the road with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. A loaded tanker handles like a brick. The stopping distance is terrible. When you have sleep-deprived drivers pushing 60-ton vehicles through dense traffic to get back to the Burj for another load, you are rolling the dice on a catastrophic kinetic impact every single hour.
And you have to consider the driving conditions. These heavy trucks were sharing the road with Ferraris and Lamborghinis. A loaded tanker handles like a brick. The stopping distance is terrible. When you have sleep-deprived drivers pushing 60-ton vehicles through dense traffic to get back to the Burj for another load, you are rolling the dice on a catastrophic kinetic impact every single hour.
That is an environmental nightmare. Dumping raw sewage into storm drains implies it flows directly out to the open water or settles into the groundwater. You are bypassing the entire filtration mechanism. From an engineering standpoint, you've just turned your storm infrastructure into a disease vector. The bacteria count in those drains would have been off the charts, creating a biohazard zone right next to residential areas.
But follow the money, Mark. The fine for illegal dumping was often cheaper than the lost revenue of waiting in line. It's a simple cost-benefit analysis. If I save 20 hours of time, I can do 5 more runs. The profit from those runs covers the potential fine, and I still walk away with cash. The incentive structure was broken. The system actually rewarded the people breaking the law.
Let's circle back to the tower itself. The interface between the building and these trucks is critical. The Burj Khalifa has a sophisticated gravity-fed system that slows the waste down using breaker levels, so it doesn't reach supersonic speeds. But at the bottom, it all hits a transfer tank. If that tank isn't emptied fast enough because the trucks are stuck in traffic, the sensors trigger a shut-off.
And a shut-off in a luxury hotel is the ultimate disaster. Imagine the call to the maintenance department. We have to stop people from using the bathrooms because the trucks are late. That is the definition of a logistical fragility. The entire user experience of the world's most expensive real estate was dependent on a guy named Ahmed driving a beat-up truck through a traffic jam.
It highlights the disconnect between architectural ambition and civil engineering reality. They built a Formula One car, but forgot to pave the racetrack. The pipes are the veins of a city. If you rely on external transport for waste, you are severing the artery. You are introducing human error, mechanical breakdown, and traffic variables into a system that needs to be 100% passive and continuous.
Eventually, the sheer volume of the poop fleet became a global embarrassment. Tourists were filming it. It was trending online. That's when the government finally panicked. It wasn't the hygiene that moved them. It was the reputation damage. They had to scramble to expand the sewage network, spending billions in a rush job that should have been done a decade earlier.
Digging sewers in a built-up city is infinitely harder than doing it before construction. You have to navigate around existing foundations, power lines, and fiber optics. It's high-stakes excavation. One wrong move with a backhoe, and you cut power to the financial district. They were doing emergency surgery on the city's infrastructure while the patient was still awake and moving.
And the cost of that retrofitting? Astronomical. We are talking about billions of dirhams that could have been saved with proper foresight. It's the dark business tax. When you skip a step to save time today, you pay 10 times the price tomorrow. The Burj Khalifa stands tall, but the balance sheet for the infrastructure around it is a testament to poor planning.
But for a few years, that truck line was the only thing keeping the city running. It was a brute force mechanical solution. Thousands of diesel engines roaring, pumping, and hauling. It's the most inefficient sanitation system in modern history. But it worked just enough to keep the lights on and the toilets flushing. It was ugly, but it was functional.
Functional is a strong word. It was barely surviving. It created a black market for waste disposal. It destroyed the local environment in the dumping zones. And it proved that no matter how much gold you paint on the walls, you cannot escape the basic logistics of human biology. If you don't plan for the waste eventually consumes you.
Precisely. Physics doesn't care about your luxury branding. Mass in, mass out. If the output equation is put it in a truck, you have failed the engineering test. The Burj is a marvel, but the ground beneath it was a mess. It's a lesson in systems thinking. You can't design the spire without respecting the sewer.
And yet, nobody talks about it in the brochures. They sell the view, not the pipes. But for the guys driving those orange trucks, they knew the truth. They were the ones literally carrying the weight of the city's ambition. Without them, the whole illusion collapses in a week.
The solution wasn't simple. You can't just run a PVC pipe out the back door. Dubai eventually launched the Deep Tunnel Sewer Storm project. We are talking about massive tunnel boring machines digging 70 meters underground, deeper than the metro system, to create a gravity-driven superhighway for waste. It's an engineering marvel that rivals the tower itself, designed to last 100 years without pumps, relying purely on the physics of the slope.
And the price tag for that fix? Billions. The Strategic Tunnel Enhancement Program was a desperate move to catch up. They realized you can't have a first-world economy with third-world sanitation. The reputational risk was too high. If the poop trucks had continued for another 5 years, international investors would have started asking serious questions about the viability of their assets. Real estate value is built on perception, and the smell was killing the vibe.
The engineering transition was brutal. Connecting a live high-pressure system from the Burj into these new deep tunnels required surgical precision. You have to divert the flow without causing a pressure spike that blows out the valves on the lower floors. It's like switching fuel lines on a jet engine while you are flying at Mach 2. One mistake, and you flood the basement of the Dubai Mall. The teams working on that connection deserve a medal.
But the legacy of the trucks remains. It proved that rapid urbanization has a speed limit. You can build the shell of a city in a decade, but the organs, the water, the power, the waste, take time to grow. Dubai learned this the hard way. Other emerging mega-cities in Saudi Arabia and Africa are looking at this case study right now, terrified of making the same mistake. The NEOM project, for example, is obsessed with underground logistics because of this.
From a survival standpoint, this scenario exposes a terrifying vulnerability. We assume that when we flush, it's gone. But in a grid-down scenario, or a logistical strike like we saw here, the city turns toxic in roughly 72 hours. If the trucks stop or the pumps fail, the sewage backs up. It doesn't just stay in the toilet. It overflows into the streets. Disease vectors like cholera and typhoid return instantly.
That's the fragility of complexity. We build these vertical islands of luxury, totally dependent on a supply chain that is thin and easily disrupted. If I were a corporate saboteur or a hostile actor, I wouldn't attack the power grid. I'd target the waste management. It's unglamorous, nobody guards it, but it paralyzes the population faster than a blackout. You can live without light. You cannot live inside a septic tank.
Exactly. It destroys morale. You can fight in the dark. You can fight hungry. But you cannot operate in a biohazard environment without full mop gear. The psychological impact of sewage failure is immediate panic. People flee. The city empties out. The Burj Khalifa would have become a ghost tower, a billion-dollar tombstone, simply because the plumbing couldn't keep up with the elevator.
And for the dark business crowd, the end of the truck era was the end of a gold rush. The trucking cartels lost their monopoly. The money moved from the transport logistics to the construction firms building the tunnels. The cash flow just shifted sectors. But for a decade, a few guys with a fleet of orange tankers made more money than the bankers sitting in the towers above them. It was the ultimate irony.
So, the verdict? The Burj Khalifa is an architectural triumph, but an infrastructure warning. It stands because they threw enough money at the problem to force a solution. But physics almost won. If they hadn't implemented the truck fleet, as gross as it was, the tower would have been a functional failure. They cheated the system just long enough to build the real pipes.
It was a gamble, a zero-day exploit on city planning. They bet that the allure of the tower would outweigh the reality of the trucks. And they won. People still visit. The photos on Instagram don't show the sewage plant. The illusion held up long enough for the concrete to dry on the new tunnels. It's the ultimate victory of marketing over engineering reality.
But for anyone listening, don't trust the facade. When you enter a megastructure or a new city, look for the basics. Where does the water come from? Where does the waste go? If you can't see the infrastructure, or if you see a line of trucks waiting by the back gate, you know the system is redlining. Be ready to move, because when the plumbing fails, it fails fast.
Always check the logistics. The glitz is for the tourists. The sewer capacity is for the survivors. If you are investing, living, or operating in these rapid growth zones, dig deeper than the brochure. The most dangerous threat isn't always a gun or a bomb. Sometimes it's just poor planning and a pipe that leads nowhere. Stay smart.
And watch your six. The world is fragile. We are one broken pipe away from the Stone Age. Check your gear, know your exit routes, and never assume the system is working just because the lights are on.
Stay analytical. Follow the money. Find the cracks. We'll see you in the next file.
Kinetic Fall out.